Oh, well. You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And Whitney. So you letting her in? Or you want me to get her?
I'll get her.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Yeah, it looks like we're streaming already. You're good.
Oh yes. Yeah, I'm getting better.
How many times did it take us? Mute myself for a second here.
Hello.
Hello.
We hear you, but we don't see you, Anne.
What do I do?
Can you go down to the bottom of your screen, like where you normally mute it? Do you see your video? Ah, there we go.
Can you
Clip
guys
on
hear
there?
me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Now you can't hear them.
And we are already live streaming.
Who can't you hear?
You are not muted by us.
I don't hear you. I don't see your muted button, but I don't hear anything.
I can hear you now.
We hear you. Maybe turn your speaker volume up.
Oh, volume. Put your volume up.
Yep, we can hear you fine.
Okay, try now.
Can you hear us now? Can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So just so you know, we are live streaming.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is good. Chief, I don't know if you mute everyone and then we talk, we unmute, but at one point I was going to try to get a vote to approve the minutes. So I think we need a verbal.
Okay. What normally happens is that when they come into the waiting room, I let them in and they come in muted and then I unmute them as they enter. So they'll all be unmuted unless they choose to mute themselves.
Okay, you're not muting everyone.
No.
Okay, you're a nicer host, clearly, than other meetings I have attended.
Unless that's what you want.
No,
Okay.
no, this is good. This
Or
is,
unless they get out of control and then.
And so I will end up muting myself
okay,
and using my yellow screen.
Oh, you're not going to just disappear?
Nah, I think this way at least you know that I'm there if needed.
yeah,
You know that I'll mute myself and go with the yellow screen. So if you need me, just say my name.
okay. And just for you to know, as you're admitting members of this committee,
Mhm.
who I think will be attending is Bob Reitman, Janet, Jim Deacon, Michael Kennedy, Cindy Corey, Nancy Wright. Tim Reynolds said he may be a little late signing on. Steve Szymborski is not able to attend, and Warren Morris is going to try to attend but was not hopeful.
Oh, we just fixed the green man.
Oh, did you?
Yes. You know, it's all taken care of. Last week we took care of that.
And was it a video card?
There's something wrong in his computer, so we had him load it on his phone and his iPad.
Oh, good. So maybe his phone will make it more likely that he can jump in.
Oh, and Tim's coming in.
Oh, good. Yeah, Tim may have been driving through some storms today. I'm glad that he's.
Oh.
Oh. That looks like the Chagrin River.
Throw it up there.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, Ann. How are you?
Okay, did you have some bad weather today?
No, actually, the drive was very easy. I just left early
Yeah.
this morning, so I actually was here at 4 o'clock.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Well, I'm assuming everyone got their materials and we'll be ready to have a lively discussion.
There we go.
Yeah.
I think just before things get started, I think the way to think about your mission here is to it's really twofold. It's identify options and then quantify what the impact of those options would be. Because I think it's council's job then to say, all right, we've got options that have been quantified from all three of these different subcommittees. And how do we knit that together in a way that we can get support from, the voters on these things? So I think a recommendation from your committee is good, but ultimately, I think, you understand that it's council's job to come up with the program.
Yes, and we're live, so am I allowed to have discussion, Janet?
If we're live, I think so. Although we haven't called it.
We are meeting
till
time.
5 o'clock. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're not
5
at meeting
o'clock.
time. Yeah.
So, Tim, there is an item that I'm not sure if we're getting out of our lane or, I'm not trying to kick the can to another committee. However, none of us want to replicate efforts.
Right. Sure.
So I'll ask you to make a call. How are you, Mike?
Good, guys. How are you guys doing?
Okay, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Did you get all the materials and everything?
Yeah, I did. I like to be a little more technically savvy today. I'm having a little technical problem with a laptop, but yeah, I think I'm in good shape here.
Well, it's a pretty good club if you're having issues.
Let's see if I move this one over here. There we go.
I see, Cindy, the top of your head, but you've got light behind you. That's better.
Oh, yeah, much better. Hi, Cindy.
You're muted, Cindy. Okay, Cindy's with us. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining in.
Oh,
We're live,
And-
but we haven't started yet.
Reitman.
Yep, I'm here. I'm still,
Hey, Bob.
I'm getting very close with my new computer, but only close.
And
How was the trip up, Tim?
It was actually, the weather was beautiful and it was an heat and very mild traffic. So made it in pretty good time. I was here by around 4 o'clock. So but I left at a little after 5:30 this morning. So
Yeah. So
But-
that's pretty, whenever you can get inside 11 hours,
yeah.
you have to consider it a good trip.
Yep.
Anything special going on in Charleston?
Well, as I think there was looting and a lot of window breaking on King Street, and a big
In the commercial,
yeah, they came all the way down to where the Charleston Historical Society is, and we're breaking windows and things. There were people in restaurants on King Street that had to be ushered out the back door. When these people came through. So that was Saturday night.
Yep.
And then it was relatively quiet Sunday. Day is today. Tuesday, we were having another couple over. I don't know if you know Scott Barnes and Sally Barnes.
Yeah, I've met them. I shouldn't say I know them, but
Yeah, we were having a drink on our porch, and all of a sudden we started hearing some chanting, and around the corner from New Street and onto Trad comes a protest group. So I ushered everybody inside, and it took about 5 minutes for those people to march past the house, and then I apparently back up Rutledge over to Colonial Lake. But they didn't. They were entirely peaceful and respectful, and I certainly didn't have any problem with
Oh,
it. But it was, it was an interesting break in the conversation.
yeah, I'm sure. Well, I've noticed. I had an appointment over at the Apple store today, and they canceled all their appointments today. So I don't know. And when I was past there yesterday morning, and the Orvis store was totally boarded up. The front of it.
Yeah, most of the shops now on King Street were boarded up. Now, they're boarding up windows in Charleston is a familiar thing. Everybody's got boards to put over their windows because of hurricanes.
Yeah.
So they were able to do it quickly, but they're all boarded up. The local Charlestonians are just shocked and stunned that got as far out of hand as it did.
I think everyone is here except for Warren, who had indicated that they could attend, and Warren was going to try to call in. But that being said, let's have a good starting time and go ahead and start the meeting if everyone's in agreement. And welcome Cindy Corey. And Cindy, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit and ask you to introduce yourself and just give a little background. We kind of gave a background of how long we've been in the village and a little bit of our experience.
Cindy Corey, I've lived in the village, I think, since 1986, so a good long time. So a couple different houses, but I've been there for a long time. And I am employed at a multifamily office and work on the investment side. So work with investments.
Thank you. Thank you for offering to help the committee, and you'll be valuable. I'm hoping everyone got the email with the attachments that Janet provided, and I'd like to approve the minutes or discuss any questions about the minutes. They were very well done. Did everyone have a chance to read minutes and?
Yes.
And
Yes,
did they
ma'am.
accurately portray? I guess Cindy can abstain, but all in favor of approving the minutes from the May 21st meeting?
Aye.
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 Any opposed or any questions? Great. Thank you, Janet. You really captured a lot of information. So I appreciate that. Before we get to the official agenda, I wanted to bring everybody up to speed. Since our last meeting, I received 2 comments, mostly comments, not so much questions, from residents about our previous meeting, and I wanted to bring you up to speed. The first comment had 3 points, and one was a clarification of the income tax numbers, which I think we will address on the agenda. The second point that the resident brought up was the school issue, which also is on our agenda for discussion. So I think we'll cover that. The third point was that we are to be reminded that higher taxes make Gates Mills less attractive to younger buyers. So I would like to respond that we are aware that and also an encouragement that the master plan and the long range financial planning work together. So my response for that is that we're aware that our efforts impact the master plan. And higher taxes are only proposed for the continuation of basic services. We wouldn't be doing this unless it was necessary. We wouldn't be having this discussion. And the second resident, pretty much of the communication was encouraging this committee to explore increasing revenue through income taxes. So that's what I know from the two comments that we have received. So to the agenda, I think the first thing to do is kind of review what we discussed is vehicles for increasing revenue and see if there are questions, discussions. I hope that everyone will kind of speak up. We need to have some dialogue here. And if Janet and Bob will have my back, I will try to tackle the first part of eliminating income tax credit for residents. And you received a chart with estimated scenarios of additional income tax based on 2019 collection numbers and Rita's model percentages. So the first number on this sheet is a 1% rate with zero credit with 1%. The way our taxes are currently structured, we have a 1% tax with a 50% credit on 0.5 of that 1%. So it is not a 50% credit on the entire 1%. It basically is a 25% credit. And that is a credit granted to residents who work outside of the village. So on this chart that we shared, just for information, just to promote some thought, the first line would be our current rate if the credit were eliminated and the additional tax collected. The second line is if we increased the income tax rate and still eliminated the credit. The third line is if it were increased, not as much, no credit. And the fourth scenario on here is an increase with the same structure of a 50% credit offered up to 0.5. So just to give you all kind of a basis of what numbers, what sort of revenue would be produced with different scenarios. So I spoke, Rita, we are in the process, and Bob and Janet can speak to this, of switching from CCA to Rita, and I have to say they're being very helpful. The credit, and this is all based on models and numbers from CCA from previous years. So these are not absolute numbers, but they're based on a population of 2,270. And Rita uses a model where 50% of residents work. I'm not sure if that model applies to Gates Mills. We don't know. And 70% of that 50% reside in Gates Mills. So I was wondering if we eliminated the credit or reduced it, how many villagers, how much of our population are we affecting with the burden? So basically, the model is 50% of the villagers working and then 70% of those living in the village. So is that clear how the income tax works in the different scenarios? Would you like to see other scenarios?
Is that saying that of those 50%, where do the other 30% reside? Are they out of state?
No, they're out of Gates Mills. It would be like Janet, and it would be teachers at Gilmore and
Okay.
Those who work in the community.
Okay. There's no way for us to know how many W-2 wage earners we have in the Gates Mills population. Is that something the county could tell us?
we can ask.
Well, the county couldn't, but Rita hasn't really begun collecting our taxes yet. But they might be able to tell from previous data. I'm not sure.
It's difficult to get, numbers that are accurate. And I did discuss with Brian timing. I said, is this something that you will be better able to answer in July or later? And he pretty much indicated that what they do is based on models.
Although, you know what, Ann, I think if 70%, I think Brian had said, like you said, 70% are individuals that pay the tax. So that would be 70% of those paying the tax would be W-2. If I'm thinking of his data correctly.
I thought they said 50%.
25% is withholding. So that would be, people that are working in the village that have the Gates Mills tax withheld, and 5% is net profit taxes. So if 70% are individual, I'm thinking of all the taxpayers that pay. I mean, I don't know the 2,270, but
what we don't know is how many taxpayers pay. That's, what we'd really love to know is to really put a fine point on it, what proportion of our tax base is paying taxes both in real estate and in income tax, and what proportion is, fixed income people that are largely paying only in real estate tax.
well, he wouldn't tell us real estate tax.
No, he wouldn't. I appreciate that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Just to try and get an understanding of who is impacted and how many are impacted by any given action.
We actually have access to the real estate tax numbers. The county treasurer could tell us how many. We know all the permanent parcel numbers in the village, and we could determine how many of those people have paid their real estate taxes. One of the good and the bad of real estate taxes, that it's not you. If you owe them, we have them coming to us. It may not force you to pay them. You may go delinquent and incur penalties, but it's not something you can get away with. If you don't file an income tax return and nobody catches you at it, you just got by.
Good point. One other thing that Brian from Rita did say is he did say Gates Mills is one of the lowest tax rates in the area at our 1% with 50 of 0.5. So just to kind of give a feel of where we are currently, which is why also I asked Janet to include kind of where we are on, with the chart with other municipalities for the levy impacts, which was, I guess, in everyone's tax bill.
Right, but that's the real estate tax piece.
Right. So is this clear for the income tax? Are there other things that you all would like to see as far as numbers? A lot of these changes, it was emphasized, can take up to 3 years for the village to realize the full impact, either eliminating a credit or raising the rate. I guess it takes a while to get the ship turned around. I don't know if you all had time to go to the site for municipal income tax, but each municipality on Rita is listed and it's in bold if their tax rate is recently changed. And I was pretty surprised at how many municipalities are in bold. Quite a few are finding.
And what would you say, is it 50%? I didn't look at it, so.
Probably not 50, but maybe close,
A lot of communities are in need of money.
Yep, everybody is. Is the assumption if the population is 2250, how many what would be considered the current number of homes actually paying tax now? Is that something that we would know?
Paying income tax or
real estate tax? I'm sorry, real estate tax.
All of them.
Well,
is it 2,270 homes? Is that
no? We have about 1,000 homes, or just under 1,000 homes.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
but they're all obligated. On tax day, we have a receivable from every single one of them.
Okay.
So it can be a discussion, income tax and the new levy. A levy, I believe, if I understand correctly, if we were to place a new levy on the ballot, the results would happen more quickly as far as our revenue stream.
And going back to that, that first table there, so basically we're saying if we kept the rate the same, but did away with the credit that we have now, that would generate an additional 483,000.
Yes.
On
This
an
is, this
an
is
annual
not set in
basis?
stone.
Yes, on an annual basis.
You know, if you look at the 1% rate, it's 483, and you raise it 1/4%, it goes up to 517, but you raise it another 1/4%, it goes up to 1,035,000. Something doesn't seem right there, or what am I missing there?
It doesn't follow mathematically.
Right.
It doesn't.
And so that's why I'm wondering if this model is correct for the 1.5, or if whatever. I think somebody, you know, that should maybe be checked, because mathematically it doesn't seem by going that extra 1/4% to that would generate that much more, over $500,000 of additional revenue for that extra 1/4%.
Right.
It does not seem logical. So we can double check on that.
Okay.
Are we still having the weekly meetings with Rita on the conversion?
Yes.
All
Yes.
right, we can maybe bring it up, that question up at that meeting coming up next week.
Janet,
Yeah,
Bob?
Anne could even email him tomorrow.
Oh, okay. All right, great.
Okay. For a levy, we discussed at the last meeting that if we did a new levy, a 1 mil produces about $221,000 of additional revenue. I'm not sure of the rules of what kind of levy, and I've been thinking about a comment about having it kind of be for a rainy day. And I'm trying to figure out what would be in a rainy day scenario that would not be in a capital improvement scenario.
Well, you would have to define rainy day, and you'd have to have with very clearly, I think, spelled out under what circumstances you could tap the fund if you were going to put it in that kind of framework. I've never heard of a rainy day levy. Maybe there are some out there,
Right.
but I've never heard of one.
The state's rainy day fund is pretty much in the discretion of the governor and the legislature.
Right.
It's not a defined set of purposes for which you would spend it.
So
It would be much more common to have a levy for fire and police, or perhaps for some other particular village service. Those are the ones that tend to stick out when you hear about them.
I assume that the state's rainy day, which it doesn't affect us, but I assume that it can be operating or capital. And it's something to consider. Would we want to be close defined?
Well,
I think what they did, if I can say something on that, it's the local government funding in their own, they're not giving out as much. They're keeping more of it, and that's why they call it a rainy day fund, but I believe it's technically in the local government fund, if you will. And they call and it's the rainy day fund, which all the local governments are saying, we need it.
yeah, it's rain.
It's raining,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
raining.
Yeah.
It's wet out there.
Our rainy day fund, if you will, is our reserves.
Right.
You know, and we can, as we did this year, we can budget to draw down on reserves, or budget to have a surplus.
Another question.
And one of the questions that I think we need to at least talk about is where do we feel that the burden for these additional taxes should fall? If, for example, we believe they should be spread across the community, then in all likelihood, they take the form of a levy because they're on real estate, and real estate values are across the community and proportionate to the value of a home that any landowner has. So people with a large estate would have a greater responsibility, and people with a little small lot would have a lesser one. If we go to the income tax numbers, what you're actually going to be doing is levying those taxes on people who are income earners. And the retirees, who I'm sure will be most appreciative, will be happy because they're living off of dividend income and other investment revenues. But people who've got a 9-to-5 job are going to be bearing the burden of that. And all of that plays into how you get a vote to approve either a new levy or real estate taxes. And I'm not certain that we know, I'm not certain I know, where the sentiment in the village lies.
I agree, Bob. I don't know the numbers. We can look at the past elections and the numbers are getting closer and closer, no's and yeses. But if I may, your comments feed in. Warren Morris asked if he couldn't join, I could speak for him. He threw out, and I don't know if it's something that can be done, but something to really be equitable to everyone. He threw out, could we do some sort of a fee where every homeowner, because the theory being every homeowner uses the same amount of services. So kind of like a homeowner association where everybody would pay the same amount. Don't know if that's something we could consider.
And I point this out only because it's dramatic. I've got 28 acres of land. Should I pay the same as somebody who has a single family home? I don't think that's fair.
Look at it. You're not housing 100 people in your 28 acres, so you don't have.
No, we're down to 2.
So you're not using the fire, the police, the roads, the service any more than someone who has 2.5 acres.
Well, and we don't have any water or sewer. So I can argue both sides of that, and my only purpose in making the comment was to say that it's far more complex. I think the idea of having a community-wide homeowners association is an interesting idea, but you saw the problems that we had when we had the alarm system. And we have people who have private alarm companies and other people who use the community's alarm companies. The cost is wildly different between those two. I only make the points because I think it's very confusing, and I would have trouble telling you what I think is fair. I might be able to tell you what I'd be prepared to do, but not what I think is fair, because I'm not sure I know.
I think that's the crux of it. On if we need to increase revenues, what's the best way to?
A community-wide homeowners association fee is essentially what that is. It's a flat tax. And,
right.
And there are arguments for progressivity, and there's arguments for a flat tax, and And it comes down to, and again, as I was saying before the meeting started, although we were live, I think the role of this subcommittee is to identify, develop, and quantify options. And then it's really the role of council then to sort through the options that come from the subcommittees and make the political judgment, which is what combination of options is likely to get the support of the residents of Gates Mills, and that's a political judgment, and they'll rely on conversations with their neighbors and people that talk to them about these things, and they'll rely to some extent on the kind of stats that we were asking before. How many fixed income people are there, and how many earned income people are there, and you know, how do we balance the burden fairly? And I'm going to interject, but this isn't a political or particularly politics statement, but my father used to, as I was being raised, used to look at me when I'd bring up questions of fairness, and he'd say, "Fair is a damn poor standard."
Well, he is not going to be in charge of marketing whatever we decide.
That's
to do.
true.
Can I ask a question on history here? When the water system and that whole infrastructure was built, how was that paid for? Was there any fee, millage, anything that came through to support that? Because obviously that impacts not a very significant amount of our population and the residents, and it's obviously a significant cost right now every year.
That's all been paid off, Mike. The assessments, the last assessments were paid in 2019.
But where does it come from? Did it come from?
But to Mike's,
it was a special assessment.
So
okay,
people were charged for getting the water, for the tap-in. There were both tap-in fees and fees for the water running past your house, and so it was pretty much allocated on the basis of use. And there are still a number of folks in the village who have opted not to connect to the water system. And I'm not certain whether they've paid an assessment on their front feet. I know they haven't paid a tap-in fee, because until you decide to do that and they go dig a hole and do all the connecting, you don't have to pay. But it may well be that you're paying for water in your street that you're not using.
I don't think that's the case. I think as I understand it, that the water was financed through the fees, tap-in fees, which is the special assessment, and also because that assessment did not cover the full cost, the village borrowed money to finance the rest of it, and that loan has been is nearly paid down now, I think.
And what was the payment on that loan that the village kicked in on a monthly basis? Or Janet, do you?
Well, we paid 2 semi-annual payments a year.
Can I interject? It was a vote of the whole village whether to go forward with the water project or not. We had a lot of people that time, my area specifically, that already, and Mike's area, that actually had water, I believe. At least our area did. And then it was charged, and Bob's right, the total was $6,500 and $6,000, and everybody got charged the first part of it, and you had the choice of paying it up front, or it could be assessed on your property. So there was all that way. And then if you tapped in, you paid the second part of it, and again, you could pay that or put it on your property. What didn't come in was financed, and that's what was recently, the project ended up getting subdivided in 4 sections. And That was what's recently, I think it was two or three different loans as it went through and was finished. And that's what's recently been totally paid off.
Yeah, there were 3 loans for the water main projects. One was paid off in 17, one in 19, and one in 20. And we have one wastewater one that's left, but there's no assessments coming in for that. And we only have 3 payments left on it.
And when that was done, that was when all the roads were paved. We waited until actually 4 sections were done, and then we repaved the road. So we're coming up on 20 years that our roads have been redone.
So it was a fee, so that a fee was used at that point to pay for it. Is the annual cost to that, was that in any way accounted for when, I guess, these charges or other fees or anything was developed and proposed at the time? Is it, because I'm looking at the budget, it's like 200, am I got it correct, 200,000 a year roughly to manage that system?
The wastewater?
Yeah.
That's for the maintenance and operation of the plant, yes.
Okay, all right, so, all right. But that would have been an expense, an ongoing expense post all that stuff, correct?
Yeah, that's
correct,
about,
yes.
it's about 185,000 to the county Public Works Department for doing the maintenance and operation. And then we have the loan payments are in there the next couple of years because there's still these few little payments left. And then we pay electricity and water utilities down there.
Jim, you had something to,
Yeah, I was looking at the year-end balance sheet and I didn't see anything on the loans or, I guess we don't have those loans anymore. So how much is that going to save us in the next 5 years for what we were paying, say 17, 18, and 19?
For the most part,
Roughly.
the assessments were paying for those loans, the ones that we were collecting on an annual basis.
I thought you said that it didn't cover it all, so the village.
Not in the
was on
beginning. That's why the loan payments, though, could be paid when we got the assessments in every 6 months from the county. They were collected with tax payments.
Okay, I'm just wondering what the next 5 years, which are we ahead by not having those loans?
Well, we
I don't
really weren't
know how much-
transferring much
No.
into the water fund. So
No, the homeowners were paying giving us the money and we
taxes.
paid the bill.
yeah, I think that
Okay.
where the savings in terms of cash flow is going to be is at the resident level. Their real estate tax, total real estate tax, will be lower as that assessment rolls off.
And it has rolled off.
And yeah,
But does that cover the operating expense annually?
no.
No.
That's
That's
a
Well,
been
and
paid for separately.
water, we don't have, it's just the waste that you're seeing that annual operating on. I mean, for the water lines and the water fund, you know, I don't know as we go forward where the money comes from if we have, you know, something happen.
Okay.
Any, do we have the capability, does council have the capability to do a specific levy for fire, police, or roads?
Yes.
And I
To put it on the ballot, they can make the determination of that, yes.
And I'm not sure I understand, I believe the Cunning Valley's big levy is a 10-year. And what is the difference? Our levies appear to be 5 years.
I think that when they put theirs out, they knew they needed 8 mills to completely rebuild all their roads over a certain number of years. So that's what they went out for. So I'm assuming they want to rebuild all their roads over the next 10 years. So they have 8 mills to cover all that rebuilding.
We have no income tax, so the 8 mills actually, if you think about our income tax figures and then our levy, it's the 8 mills, we're similar in needs. But anyway, any other levy questions? Any other information that would help make a decision?
You said 1 mil is equal to about 220,000.
Mhm.
And what number are we looking between 400 to 450 is what we need to increase to not
Yes,
take our reserve in half? Is that the
that's
number?
correct.
Well,
Yeah, that's
that- I think
basically, it
That
builds
keeps
up to
everything
that.
where it is.
Yes,
So it's not adding in rebuilding of roads or other things that may not have be being done since the estate tax went away and capital improvements come down.
So Jim, on the agenda, discussion of revenue increase targets. In the original that was sent to you, the spreadsheet, what just kind of jumps out at me always is the capital improvement fund expenses. And if you look at those expenses for 2005, 6, there are some years that are less, but 7, 8, as they go, they are considerably higher. I would say almost double what we have been spending since the inheritance tax went away. So to me, that feeds into the what is our target, not that whatever is recommended by us needs to be the end all. However, we were spending $1.1 million, $1.2 million, 900, $1.1 million. And in the last few years, we have not spent over 600,000. So that goes to we've been just milling and filling. And so the 400 figure, 400 to 500 is somebody else said it is a number to tread water.
Okay, so
And I think that's just straight. The amount of expenses we have had on maintenance and capital expenses has gone down to the credit of our different divisions. However, that's why it's a tricky question. It's not necessarily clearly a $400,000 or $500,000 number.
Being new, do we have a rainy day fund? So if we need, I mean, the reserve fund, I guess, is there if we need money for some project that comes up?
that's correct. That's a good question, Cindy. I think, we have capital expenditures that we can anticipate over the 5-year period. A new fire truck is in that projection. And then there are capital, and we've essentially made estimates of what our level capital expenditures are. And I believe it's roughly around 600,000. It's what Chip had in the services for the road program. There's no current plan to completely redo all the roads, and I've not heard anybody suggest that was imminent. Karen, do you have a point of view on that? You're mute. There we are.
Yeah, we don't have a plan as far as that goes. There's a discussion back and forth that a lot of our roads are just fine. Some are not, some are whatnot. But the point is they are getting 20 years. They are all 20 years old. And
Yeah.
so more of them are going to need more than just the mill and fill. And we need to come up with a plan for that. I think we have to cover the loss and then provide for the future, looking that maybe we don't do all the roads at one time, but we have to provide that we could do some if it's needed. I mean, we're like a culvert away from a really big problem.
Yeah.
We have so many culverts in Gates Mills. One of those can, mess everything up.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And that's to some extent gets back to Cindy's point that that's what reserves are for when you have a big unanticipated need. But you will always have those, and you have to have a way that you rebuild your reserves
Right.
as well. So
I think we need more than, I think we need to cover the loss, and then we need more, whatever that means. Maybe it's a safety services, or maybe it's separate and it's a roads only. I mean, you could argue for either one. And maybe we do something with the income part of it also. Just thoughts.
Roads just seem, they're visible. People can see the roads.
Well, and it
Yes.
is by far our largest expense, is maintaining roads, bridges, and culverts. That's
We've done
where-
real good over the last number of years with our engineer helping us get funding and money for a lot of the different projects. So we really have gotten to the caught up part, caught up on doing major projects and caught up on paying for all the loans and whatnot. But to go forward, we really need to, I think, do both things.
Tim, you might have talked about this before, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but I'm trying to understand why is 2020 on the municipal tax revenue so much lower than the historical average, which is about $1,685,000, but
Right. On the projection, we took the advice of I think it was Rita that estimated the impact of the COVID virus on municipal receipts, and lowered it, I believe, about 200,000. Is that right, Janet?
That's correct.
Lowered it from what our budget is. Normally, our budget will basically forecast it as flat across, and our current budget is flat relative to 2019. But for this projection, we decided, because the budget was prepared post or pre-COVID, that we needed to update it to what we thought the impact of COVID might be.
okay. Is there a risk of the municipal tax dropping more because of fewer and fewer people working? And
Yes, sure.
and is that, I guess that's why I was asking about what do we think is really the real number for taxpayers, and what does that look like over the next 5 years? Because, the forecast is only as good as those people who are earning income or who haven't moved to Florida yet on us. So,
Well, yeah, I think there's risk on both sides, both upside and downside risk. And I think, could it get worse? Absolutely. And it's the big question about COVID is this an L-shaped recovery, which means no recovery, a U-shaped recovery, or a V-shaped recovery? And there's a lot of opinions on that. I think what we did was, I think I'm not going to call it a conservative estimate, because you could have taken it down $500,000 if you wanted to be really conservative, but I'd say it was a balanced estimate of the COVID impact.
Yeah. Best.
thank you.
Should we move on to a discussion of the feasibility of public school action? I know some of the members of this committee had some questions.
I just want to make one more point, if I
Okay.
can interrupt. I'm sorry. I just want to make one more point. On a projection like this, when what you're using it for is to look at how, not only how you can cut expenses, but also how much new revenue do you need to raise. I really wanted, I was very sensitive to being careful not to lowball projected revenues, because I don't want people feeling like we're fixing the game by lowballing things. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
We can jump in with any questions at any time, but the feasibility of public school action, there has been research, but I'd like to give committee members a chance to ask questions or share ideas. And I will defer probably to Janet and Bob on most of these.
Well, if just to be provocative, we have examined the issue. One question that is germane to us is, do we have the flexibility to move beyond a county line if we were to select a different school system, which would give us the flexibility of going to Geauga County and still be contiguous? We, of course, have the options of Chagrin Falls and Orange, both of which would be contiguous to the village. We know that there is a compelling economic reason to find a way to cut the taxes. But having said that, we also have the example of Hunting Valley, which attempted to do an end run around the school board of Orange, and not only did the Orange people get their head up, but the legislature, once it became visible what they were doing, the legislature turned their back on them. We are obligated to be in a school system. We may have some flexibility, but I can assure you that if we were to advise the Mayfield School District, because of the amount of money that we contribute to their school costs and the relatively low burden that we impose upon them because of the limited number of students that we have, that we would find that there is a significant pushback. In an earlier meeting, I said I thought the cost of defending that would run to six figures, and someone made the assumption that that meant $100,000. I would also point out that six figures runs up to $999,000 as well. So I wasn't making a prediction. I was only trying to dramatize the fact that it would be a very serious fight. Mayfield would not give in easily to us. And I don't know, as I look at our budget, where we would find, if $1 million, if one extreme rather than the other is appropriate, where we would find the strength, economic strength, to fight that fight. We have for years and years and years resisted engaging in politics of the Mayfield School District, and maybe that's because we couldn't succeed. I'm not saying that we dropped the ball, but George, the chief, George Hughes, is kind of our friend in court, but I don't know whether that really means we have any clout there at all. We've had residents from time to time run for the school board. I don't think in the recent, somebody will correct me, in the recent past, I don't remember someone, a Gates Mills resident, who was on that school board. But this is a very serious challenge, and I have a feeling that would be a very substantial distraction from the greater problem that we're dealing with. That to attempt to say we're going to solve this problem by getting out of the school board might mean that we have no solution for several years. And I think we have to take that into consideration when we decide how we want to address the needs that the village is going to have in relatively short order. We also, and this isn't exactly to the school board point, but we need to have a better informed electorate about the costs of living in a community, whatever community you live in. And I don't have the feeling, I have the feeling that more people would like to pay less tax and prefer a little more service than the opposite of that. And that's going to be, we need to have meetings with people and help them understand, in the belief that if they understand, they'll do the right thing. I hope they'll do the right thing if they understand.
I agree, Bob. I think that tackling the school system may be a small part of a recommendation that maybe council and the mayor form a committee to see if we could get more of a voice in Mayfield. But the actual tackling of the school issue, in my mind, is over this committee's pay grade and timeframe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And this is Sandra, and I'm not a member of this committee, but I'm just listening in. And I chair the school liaison committee for the village, and I certainly agree with the points that Bob made. You know, I would say that we have an excellent school district. We don't have enough people taking advantage of the of the school district, except perhaps in our own gem, the elementary school. And there are more families moving into the village, and we do see a higher enrollment in the elementary school. And we've had good relations overall, again, with the staff and the principal over the years. And we do from time to time meet with the superintendent, have him and Scott Snyder, the treasurer, make presentations to the, to village council. And they've always been very professional and very cogent on the numbers, so to speak. So we've been impressed. It's not to say that we don't spend a lot of money. We contribute 61% of our taxes to the schools, and I think it concerns all of us. Past kind of legal challenges that I guess are germane to this. One was outside of the Canton area, the Hills and Dales schools. They were in 2 school districts, and they had the ability to choose which one they wanted to go into, and they did that. So if you look at some old cases, that's an example where a community got to pick, but we're only in 1 school district. So I'm not sure legally that gives us, an option. In terms of representation from the village, Emily McCartney was on the school board for many years, a very, significant and legendary member of the village. And Sue Grosek, who is on the school board and just recently stepped down as the president, owns property in the village and is building a home. We've enticed other individuals in the past to run for the school board, and it just hasn't worked. But it doesn't mean that we won't be able to do that in the future.
But isn't our role on this committee to present recommendations for a long-term plan? And me, long-term is a 5 or 10-year plan. That if this is where a significant portion of our property taxes going on, I'm not advocating that you disengage from the school, which I think Hunting Valley is how they portrayed it. And I think that's what became a political firebomb for them. But that we have a discussion that's a serious discussion about the valuation of the property in Gates Mills and whether it's increasing or decreasing, and how our population is doing and the cost of our village. And so I don't think it's something that should be off the table as a recommendation, at least. Whether or not long-range planning wants to take it and do it, that's really their ultimate decision to do. We're just here to make the recommendations, is my understanding. Do I have that correct, or am I an outlier on that topic?
Sam?
I think you do have that correct, that it's as I said earlier, it's for this committee to identify, develop and quantify options. And it's for council then to decide which options to pursue.
I mean, even if it's
not really.
I'm sorry, even if it's a 1% shift from 61 to 60, again, it's relevant dollars for our budget. We're, if we're trying to get 200,000 here, 300,000 there, 400,000, 100 here or whatever, that's a different discussion than saying, hey, we're going to disconnect from you as a school and go somewhere else, versus here's the reality of our fiscal situation. And if you want us to be healthy long-term, here's what we're proposing. It still may not be met with open arms, but it's a suggestion that I think should be on the deck.
Are those percentages assigned by the county auditor? The percentages, are they assigned by the county auditor?
What percentages?
The percent of our taxes that go to Mayfield City School District.
Well, like on your tax bill, it shows all the levies that would pertain to your property. So when you add those up, that's where the percentages come from. Yes.
Okay.
But those percentages represent votes that we have taken. When we voted for the Health and Human Service levy, that was apportioned on the real estate in Cuyahoga County. And so and if we didn't vote for it, it was still apportioned as long as it passed. When the school board has a levy, it has in recent past at least, failed in Gates Mills. But it passed in Mayfield Heights, and it passed in the other two communities,
Right.
Mayfield Village and
Highland
because
Heights.
of the substantial number of families with children in the school system in those communities.
But-
So we've got an uphill fight, and I, with all due respect, I believe that they might be kind enough to listen to our complaint. I don't think they'll do anything to cut the cost of the school system. If you look at it, all school systems are subject to the same disease, which is we can have more for our students here. And to do that, we have to have more money. But we'll have a swimming pool, we'll have an auditorium, we'll have indoor facilities, and I'm not objecting to them because I've voted for all those things, unfortunately, forever. But everybody is not so inclined.
In effect, you're saying, Bob, we have taxation without representation here because we're
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, that's just what it is.
Well, we're a minority. We're represented. But
Yeah,
we're,
not
we're a
represented.
minority.
Yeah, we
Proportionally.
It's
we
the
have
tyranny of the
representation
majority
with-
is what
Right.
it is.
Right. We have representation with regard to village costs. We have the 17, whatever that number is, 17% of the taxes that come to the village. We absolutely control that.
I'd rather
But it
control
is
the
a lot of
larger.
money.
Yeah, obviously it's not enough. So that's the conundrum here, right?
That's the problem.
Sandra, how many people are on the Mayfield School Board?
I believe that that's a good question. I think there's
5.
7 or 8.
Five.
Five.
Five, six,
Five. There,
less than
George
two
Hughes,
handfuls.
Brosick, Teresi, Ron Fernaro, maybe 5, 6, I guess.
I mean, that's the,
Brosick, that might be 7.
okay.
Al Hess and George.
Mhm.
I think it's 5,
Okay, well, let's
I
keep
think
I
that
think.
as a consideration of something to go in a recommendation to the long range financial planning, and then to go further to council. Next on the agenda is the discussion of revenue increase targets. And as a committee, I think we need to start closing in and be comfortable with a range of a revenue increase that we want to consider, and we want to eventually make a recommendation. So is there any information to help, any information that has not been distributed that would help everyone kind of get their thoughts around this? Or do you have questions?
Again, the question on just how much of our population is really paying income tax anymore and will be paying is obviously a calculation that would, given our demographics across the country, we've got a very significant part of our population aging into retirement or already in retirement. So what's the remainder for those to support the balance, basically? I think that is a relevant number. I don't know if it's capable to grab that number, but to me, it seems like a number I'd want to know if I was doing a forecast. So
I think we will be able to grab that number through Rita, but unfortunately, until they really get their hands around our tax situation, which will be sometime probably at the end of the third or fourth quarter of the year, they ought to be able to answer that question for us, though. And unlike our past provider, they not only have that data, but they have analytical models to extract it. But that's
we have
half year away.
We have asked that question of a variety of ways, and they are not at this time able to give anything more substantial than the model I explained. And I'm not sure if 50% of our 2,200 residents are working.
Yeah.
It's all based on a model. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't think that you agree, Bob, they won't be able to really close in on that for a while.
I would think so, that they, you know, in the perfect world, they would look at the tax returns for the 2020 and answer a question like that. But we also need to remember that we're talking about earned income. We have a lot of folks who are not only annuitants, but we have a lot of folks who are investors, and their income stems from equities and from other investments. So, and those are not, as a generalization, subject to our income tax. Our income tax really applies to wage earners.
Right.
So I think the 70% of the 50% kind of sounds logical to me, but it doesn't help necessarily close in. I believe that the employees in the employees that work in the village, it's the big employee places would be Gilmore, the Hunt Club, Stars, and the village. So those are people that would not be necessarily affected if we reduce the credit. But if we raise the income tax, if we recommend that, they would be affected. So
right.
Where do we go from here? We need to, I feel, need to start closing in on recommendations, what we're going to be comfortable with.
Can I make a suggestion? I think
Yes.
What would be really helpful, I think, to both this committee and I think also to council, is if you were able to scrub down the chart that you provided so that we're confident in the numbers, which, as Jim pointed out, that $1 million number for a 1.5 tax rate makes us less confident because it doesn't look like it adds up. If we could scrub down those and then kind of come up with a matrix saying, okay, here are the options. Here, we don't know necessarily what the proportion of the population is, but here's the demographic type that this affects most. So you get a good sense of here's how we can raise the money, and here is the part of our residents that are going to support that. And then I think if you have that in front of you, you can begin to maybe mix and match, maybe think through, okay, how do we balance the load across the demographics? But if we could develop that kind of chart, I think it would be a great way to frame the conversation.
Okay.
I agree.
So get a chart on the income tax portion of this. We know what a levy portion would be.
Right.
School portion, I would like to say is a whole nother endeavor.
Yep.
I don't know what anyone thinks about kind of the homeowner association concept. If we want to have more discussion about that, we can. I don't even know if that's a possibility. I don't know where to go research that.
Yeah. Well, it would have to be voted in, and as I said, I think it's however you want to call it, it's a flat tax across the village.
Yeah.
I mean, based upon those numbers of the 50% and 35%, we basically have about 397 wage earners in the community total. So just shy of 400. So, and if you said, if you did pay a fee and you had, let's just say 700 people paid $300 a year, that's 210,000. That covers your wastewater, at least part of that, but you still have a road issue.
If we have 50% of 2,200 working, that's 1,100, and then 70% of that are wage earners that live in the village.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, then maybe I misunderstood. 50% of the, you're saying
50% of 2,200.
okay, that's 1,100 I'm gonna pay, and I got then, how many of that?
And I believe 70% of that 1,100 are village residents that are currently getting a credit of
So
50%
790.
on 0.5.
I'm off by decimal. It was 794. It's twice as much. My math bad here.
No.
So 794 wage earners in our village is what that number gets us to.
That doesn't sound unreasonable to me. I just,
I can tell you on my street, I had 5 people that 4 of them aren't working right now. So I don't know what the rest of the neighborhood looks like, but that's what I've got.
yeah.
It is very easy if you would like us to circulate, some of the other municipalities and what their tax rates are, but it's pretty, you just go to Rita online, it's readily available. If I found it,
Yeah,
just to see what some of
that
the,
data is all available.
Yeah, we are quite a bit lower than, like, I think Mayfield Village is 2%. And I think Highland is as well 2%. I don't know, you probably have the chart, but.
and they have progressive.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Mayfield Village is 2% with a 1% credit on the 2%.
Wow.
So if you live in Mayfield Village and work outside, you get a credit of basically half.
Yeah, we pay 61% of our taxes go to the Mayfield district is what you're saying, 60-ish.
That's on Janet's pie chart.
Yeah,
Yep, I think so.
yes.
Yes.
A rate increase might be easier to swallow if there is a credit, because I would think there's a lot of Gates residents who are working that don't work in the village, more than 30%, but maybe I don't know.
No, I think it's 70% of wage earners in the village. 70% of people who are employed that live in the village are currently working outside. So
That's what I said, but it's that number. I would think it would even be higher than 70%.
correct.
A lot of residents that work at Gilmore, because other than Gilmore, what else is there? Not a lot, right?
Not much. Yeah. Saras and the village itself. And
Yeah, so I would think that number
To
would
the
be more,
post office.
to be honest with you, that work outside of the village, but maybe I could be wrong too. I don't know how to, just my gut feeling.
And I would just throw out that if you work outside the village, it's very likely that the municipality where you work has raised their income tax.
yeah.
So it would be a kind of a doubler. Yes, Sandra.
And I just had a comment. I don't know if it's valid or not. I'm just going to raise it. And Karen and I have talked about this. For right now, so many people are working from home. So even if they typically work downtown, they're working from home in the village. I know there's an exception now where, you're not being assessed local, income tax for working in your home, but that may change, that could change in the future as more businesses are having people work from home. So that could increase the number of people who are working in the village and perhaps at high incomes.
We talked about that at the last meeting.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's just, it's going to depend on the state, but I think even Bob or Karen said that, that would be really hard for the state to do because they'd be making big cuts to those municipalities that are used to getting that income.
Okay.
Like the city of Cleveland.
Yeah,
for one.
Yeah.
One of the things that is an unfortunate reality at the moment, and that is that there is going to be a tremendous amount of sorting and pushing and pulling that are going to go on in the next half of this year. The so-called new normal is going to be different. and there are businesses that have found that people can work from home. They don't have to come into the office. Would you like to be a landlord in one of these brand new shiny buildings that suddenly is going to lose its tenants because people don't need that office space? There's going to be
my company is a fairly extreme example of that. We are right now 100% work from home, and my lease is up in February. And at the moment, what we think we're going to do is continue working as 100% work from home, and then as needed, there's a number of places that offer spot shared office stuff facility. So I can, if I need a meeting room, I'll go rent a meeting room. If somebody needs to locate at a desk for a couple of months for whatever reason, we'll rent a desk. And as I've thought through that, I mean, it's enormously appealing, and we think it will work for our company. But where's the tax locus on my company then? You know, am I am I a Hudson Corporation, or what am I? What kind of company am I?
Well, and Tim, what you're going to find is that you have 2 or more communities that are going to be tugging over how that is interpreted. Yeah. So where is the situs of earning? Is it in the headquarters office where you've got the CEO and a secretary, or is it in the home where you've got individuals? I don't know the answer to that, and I don't mean to be an alarmist, but I think that we're going to see such a dramatic change in the way things have been done of late as we get into the coming year. And one of the unfortunate things is we need to make a decision while we don't know exactly what the bottom line is going to be. But that doesn't mean we don't have to make a decision.
To that point, Bob, when Brian said and that Rita wouldn't have numbers till later in the year, but those numbers are based on 2020. They're skewed. I mean, you know, I don't know that is a great basis to work off of. So I think we need to make our decision and just be mindful of the set of circumstances. So I don't want to keep you all because I really do appreciate everyone coming. The next meeting I had thrown out Wednesday, June 24th or Thursday, June 25th. I really just kind of wanted to hear if those days were really bad for everyone. And I believe Thursday we could do earlier morning and or, you know, 4 or 5 o'clock. Wednesday, I believe, would be a later start. So did anyone have a chance to look at those dates? And it may be in person, so I would ask everyone to let me know, you know, as time moves on, if you're comfortable meeting in person. I assume we would be masked up. I don't know. And I don't know if that makes it a better situation to be in person.
Will be, if we do it in person, I think we've been talking about using the community building, and which gives us, particularly a group this size, it's much easier to socially distance and be okay. For what it's worth, I'm wide open on both of those days.
I am also.
But 23rd,
25th would be a better day for me.
I'm sorry, Bob?
The 25th would be a better day for me. I have a 4 o'clock board meeting on the 24th.
Okay. Okay, I will share a doodle poll in the hopes that we can get everyone. And if it's okay, we'll have to make a determination if it's electronic or in person as things progress. And Tim, is that okay with your schedule as far as the long range financial planning? If we've got a couple weeks between this meeting and
I think that my guess is that shared services is going to go on for another month or so, and Larry may be able to wrap up his other revenues one relatively quickly, but I think you're fine on that time frame.
Okay, so I would ask everyone, let's, next meeting, we need to close in on some recommendations. I think not, to Tim's point, let's get some charts going and get some solid ideas to share with the long-range financial planning and then hence council.
Great.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you,
Good.
everyone.
Thanks, Guy.
Thanks all.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Ann. Bye all.
Yep, thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
And
guys.
Bye.
Ann, you had no comments on the live stream. You had a maximum of 5 people viewing the live stream. No comments.
Okay.
And I did put that note on there to email you directly any questions or comments.
Does anybody know, are we still on live? Yeah.
Yes, we have.
Okay.
We are, and I just hope everyone feels comfortable asking for information if more information is helpful to make a decision. It's a quandary.
Hey, Janet, would you have an hour or so available either tomorrow or Friday to kind of look through Chip's questions?
State auditors are coming back tomorrow.
Oh, joy.
So, and I have not reconciled or done the financial statement or the council packet yet.
Well, then I'm going to stay far away from Village Hall.
I am completely open next week though, and I have jotted down many answers to those questions.
Okay, well, let's shoot for Monday or maybe Tuesday would be better. And that way
Monday's even fine. Yep.
Okay,
Monday or Tuesday, you let me know.
I will wander down and I'll give you a call on Monday.
That would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Ann.
Bye-bye.
And bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Let's see.